This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, I'd like to call the Bike and Tech Committee meeting to order for Monday, July 13th, 2026. Roll call, please.
Mary Karlowski.
Here.
Kyle Chico.
Here.
Jessica Atkinson. Here. Dale Schmidt.
Here.
And Kim Shanna. Here. Michelle Przybelski and Sue Krieger are excused.
Thank you.
Okay, please stand for the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please remember our men and women throughout the world in uniform. I have no changes to the agenda. Any motion to approve, please?
A motion to approve.
I'll second. Motion and a second to approve the agenda as presented. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Action on the minutes of the May 11, 2026 Bike and Tech Committee meeting.
Do you have an extra one? That's the last one. Last one. You can share with you.
Okay, does anybody want to make a motion on those minutes?
A motion to approve because I didn't see anything in those minutes have changed that we needed to discuss.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve those minutes. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Number 6, items for discussion and possible action. Consider, discuss, act on engineering services and construction costs to add a crosswalk to the east leg of the intersection of San Luis and Cormier. Brian Rickert.
Okay, Jackson, are you able to allow me to share my screen? Okay, there we go. Okay, let me put the variant down here. Okay. Very small on the screen. I don't know, are we able to make me bigger, Jackson, or no?
Working on it.
Okay, so I'm gonna get started here. So very recently in the southeast intersection of San Luis and Cormier, the promenade.
Say both ways. I haven't even decided yet.
We're gonna go. Promenade, kind of like a square dance?
Yes, yeah.
Just depends on what kind of, societal.
Yeah,
Is it bougie or?
It really does,
Yeah.
yeah.
What's your ex?
People
I've
live
heard-
there, they even say it both ways, and I'm like, I have to figure out.
Yeah.
what I'm
Anyways,
doing.
we're all talking about the same thing.
Yeah.
The thing across the street from Target.
Yeah.
Gorgeous building. Anyways, so most recently, you guys are likely aware, the Brown County Library is also moving into the front side of that building. Obviously with the additional foot traffic that will be generated from not only the library, but the residents that live in that multifamily complex. Also the possibility of potentially, I don't know if this is still in the works, but needs to maybe park, in various areas, whether it's on-street parking or maybe parking that may occur, say, at the church. We're kind of missing the crosswalk on the east leg of that intersection. So it's very unique. You'd think that there would be one here, but there's not. So what we thought was going to be a really easy project, like, oh yeah, we'll just jump in and we'll paint a crosswalk and put in some curb ramps, kind of turned into more than what we really bargained for. In this corner of the intersection right about here, if you go through that area, you'll notice there's a manhole in that intersection right now. That manhole goes into an 8 foot by 8 foot by 6 foot tall vault that's underground. So essentially they have a room underground. Inside that vault
Put
is,
people in it?
there's no people in it. Well,
I'm just
That
checking.
we know.
yeah, I was gonna say. Now we're on record, so maybe there's people living in it. Anyways, but inside of that vault is a PRV, which is a pressure reducing valve, which is part of our old water system. So our water system here used to operate off wells, and we used to have multiple different pressure zones. Right now, the whole village is on the same zone. The PRV, pressure reducing valve, is not operational. I think if we were to make it operational, it would probably fall apart if you were to pressurize it. So rather than putting a curb ramp in over something that's legacy that's likely going to fail in the future, the right thing to do likely is to take that pressure reducing valve out along with the vault, which is going to mean we're going to need to remove some of the concrete out in Cormier and then rebuild everything back up. Because luck has it that generally what will happen is if you put that curb ramp in, all of a sudden that vault will start to fail or the pressure reducing valve will fail, and then you'll just be there the next year. So with that, due to the scope of the project, a little bit more complex than what we originally anticipated, reached out to Ayers, who does a lot of contracted engineering service for us. Got a letter for professional services, which is also attached to this agenda item. Also had an engineer's estimate put together due to the fact that this is over 50,000. Is it 25? 50,000. Due to the fact that it's over 50,000, state statutes just changed. We would have to competitively bid it because it is an improvement. So with that being said, just looking to see if there's interest in it. We would be able to use TIF funds for the project. And then we'd work on design later part of this year, and work would actually occur next year.
So can I just ask in the expected traffic, foot traffic? So the expectations because of parking at Nativity and coming across to the library, or
Correct.
people that live on the north side that want to get, or is it for the people from Promenade to go to church?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really hard to project, what the future is going to look like. It's my understanding that there are quite a bit of students that come from the schools to the library. How they're going to get there, cut through neighborhoods, I don't know which way, but I do want, Cormier, especially coming down that hill, it's a little bit more of a challenging intersection, especially for young individuals, to make sure that we have all safety devices in place for the youngsters. Or, if it is someone that maybe needs to go to church or vice versa.
I know that Brown County has already been talking with Nativity about utilizing their lot because in their initial, like when they initially went into the building with us, what they thought they were going to need for parking is very different from now, the programming and things that they're changing and anticipating to host at there, because it's a new library, lots of new things coming to it. So I know they're planning to work with Nativity to have parking there, because I know she had even mentioned requesting like a mid-block crossing, like where it had used to be there, and I was like,
so it reappears again.
So I know they're anticipating to have people parking there and that Target to be coming across, because they're not anticipating us having enough parking there now.
How many parking spots will the library have?
They have about 20-ish, but I mean, right now they can overflow easily into, because we're not full, but like by next summer, there'll probably be a little bit harder time because you're gonna have more guests, more people parking on our area of the parking too. So I think they're gonna end up needing more. They said they had like, I think, is it 7 spots at their current library? So they're like,
They don't have many currently.
no, so they were like, initially they were like, it's like 3 times what they currently had. They didn't foresee that as being an issue, but now they're
They've probably got a
anticipating
lot
more of a
more
concern.
space to have events.
They
right,
do,
where
yeah,
they
and they have a great like children's area, so they're anticipating like drawing from some other libraries as well, which is great, which is awesome to have
For the
more
current
going on there.
bridge, people parked all up and down the streets and across the
That's
streets
true,
and that
too.
parking lot over
Yeah.
there. So even as tiny as it was, there were a lot of
There was on-street parking.
I don't know why we wouldn't do it. Why wouldn't we do it?
Brian, are there pedestrian lights on 3 of that side, or, so if I can come up, when they had the grand opening of the promenade, I was on that balcony and there was a woman standing here, wanted to go here, and she couldn't get across, so she pushed the button to walk over here. When the light changed, she pushed the button to get over here, and then pushed the button again and had to walk over here to get to that side of the street.
That would be what you'd have to do right now.
Yeah.
Yes, yep, there's no buttons, no pedestrian heads, nothing like that.
Since the conversation came up and since we're in the process of planning this, it would make sense to discuss that mid-block crossing a little bit. There was a mid-block crossing for San Luis that went to Nativity, you probably see it on that aerial if Brian kind of scopes down a little bit. The issue with the mid-block crossing that was there was it didn't meet any typical standard for design, which would create some liability for the village and for end users. It basically discharged into two driveway aprons.
Yep.
Which does not meet ADA accessibility requirements. So we did discuss a mid-block crossing being in that general location, and it would be pretty tough because of the location of where it is to Cormier and Oneida, and then where the other intersection is. So if you would like, we can kind of walk through that. To note, there is a bus stop on Cormier immediately across the street from kind of one of the entrances to the library. You can actually see it on that map there. There is a bus stop for the fixed route service that's there.
Is that one still there? Oh, wait, yeah, down there
This
further,
one,
sorry, yeah, I say, and then there's one up here,
And
but
there's one
yeah,
in the corner.
Yep.
right?
There is another. Out here somewhere.
yep, it's on.
You wouldn't have lights on the block crossing there, would you? Crossing lights or flashers or anything?
I would think if
I'm
you
only
did it there,
thinking
you'd
with it
almost have
because
to.
you've got like a trifecta of senior type
That's,
places. You've got the promenade, you've got the library,
you have the church,
and then you've got the church, and all of them tend to skew older,
agreed.
meaning they're not exactly quick walkers.
I feel like you'd almost have to have something like that, even just given how close it was to Oneida Street and everyone turning and coming there, like they're not gonna be speedy. But I also think being realistic, if the library has people, even for their younger groups, let's say people, because they said there's a big children's program coming in there, you're gonna have moms with strollers and all of that. I honestly think you're gonna have a lot of people crossing from Nativity. They're not gonna go up to that corner, being realistic. Just because I'll be honest, we see it already now, like when there was a lot of like construction going on there. People just park, anyone that worked there all crossed and just played Frogger. We'd see it constantly. And I'm not saying that's the right thing, but just being
What's the,
totally honest.
what's the distance between Holmgren and the mid-block crossing on Cormier over by the Rogers baseball stadium?
Kyle, so you're still, I mean, previously when I went to Nativity, I'll be honest, that's exactly what we did. We never parked in Nativity's parking lot. We parked
Well,
across the street.
there was a time,
Yeah.
But that was on Sunday.
Yeah,
Right.
there was a time mass attendance was pretty full at all the masses.
Yeah.
So there wasn't really enough room in the parking lots. That's no longer the case.
I think it's gonna be the opposite. It'll be now they're parking there to come over to the library. Is what
It's 800. Yeah, center of the intersection. That's cool.
So just as we were kind of talking, we put in that mid-block crossing, if you will, with rapid flashing beacons on Cormier, just off of east of Holmgren. It's about 500 feet from the intersection. And that's probably as close as you're gonna
Yeah,
want to
that's
get to that
definitely-
intersection.
As close as you want to be.
So from Oneida Cormier intersection up to San Luis Place is about 900 feet. So if you went 500 feet up, let's say from the intersection, you're probably,
I think it's closer to 800.
Is there, no, there's probably not a more updated, because I know we shifted the driveway and there's that big concrete, and all the library has that big, I forgot what they call it in front there, that's all concrete. But I don't know if you could go further back. I
I
just,
don't think we have any. Actually, Google Earth that worked.
There is precedent for that if you think of the crosswalk between Lambeau parking lot and the hotel up there. That's kind of a mid-block thing. And if you ever go to the hospitals on Webster, they have that there. There's parking across the street and they have a beacon in mid-block.
Are we saying this is either or? Okay, because I do like, I mean, I would want to hear from community members why not to do the one you proposed. I think we should. I think we should make it walkable to get to that library and as safe as possible.
yeah, my only thought for bringing it up is if we're talking about having an engineered plan done, now you gain the efficiencies of having it being that corridor kind of planned out, so that intersection and then potentially mid-block in the same.
Kim, I agree with you, but to go back to Jessica's point,
Yep.
people are gonna do it regardless.
So, but we're talking about both then.
Yeah,
We're not
yeah.
talking about.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I agree. Both would be the way to do it.
Because to your point, for the efficiency, if we're just doing it.
That's about as good as it
Well-
gets.
Yeah, you get at least the driveways,
Is it just for the people with the parking issue, or are we also thinking about the bus stop issue?
right? There's bus stop too.
Right,
because
that's
it's-
it.
I say the bus stop's right there too, so then they'd be
Right.
crossing right there.
Right.
They're not gonna walk all the way out.
But here's my 2 cents. This just happened to me the other day. I was turning off of Oneida, going up to Ridge, and I needed to be in that outside lane. And I learned, I got stopped, that you cannot pull into the outside lane from turning off of Oneida. You have to go into the inside lane,
And
put your directional on, okay?
Yep.
Well, I almost whacked a person because they decided I was going this way. And like literally, I had about this much room. They zoomed by me so fast. So my only thought is that if that bus stop is there, we have a mid-block crossing, are we going to encourage people to cross there? And then that's going to happen, because that person would not, with my car where it was, that person would not have seen anybody in the crosswalk. Just a thought.
As I said, I think you'd have to have flashing lights and all that, or I think you're gonna have people getting hit for sure. Like it would have to be an all or none.
It's definitely a challenge when you go with a rapid flashing beacon. I mean, they obviously offer a hawk system which actually physically stops the traffic mid-block. That's actually like a traffic signal. We don't have any of those here in the village currently. That's a better, more safer, proven way of stopping traffic mid-block for pedestrians, because it actually physically stops the traffic signal. It turns red, flashes back and forth, and stops people. You know, honestly, I've seen it even out here. I mean, you'll have one lane that stops, one lane that doesn't stop.
Yeah.
And it sometimes, hopefully, the person is attentive enough to notice that, but it's not a good situation. Sometimes people do push the button with the false hope that everybody's gonna stop. That doesn't always occur.
Right, if we go forward in any form of fashion with this, are we still looking at on an angle crossing, or are we looking at more of
No, if
a
we were,
parallel, like a 90-degree crossing from either side?
if we're doing a crossing, we'd do a full ADA compliance, would be shortest distance to shortest distance, so straight across. No diagonals. And then you'd have actual, curb ramps that have truncated domes or detectable warning fields, whatever you want to call them. So it's an actual ADA crossing, not a driveway ramp to a driveway ramp. So
Is that bus stop on the north side or on the south? People definitely cruise on
Yeah,
that
I
road.
do.
right there's the bus stop. You'll see people staging there waiting for the bus quite often, actually.
Because we had that discussion at a school, remember? The bus was, and we were always concerned about the kids. You lose sight because you can't see them. Or
I suspect that if there's a bus stop there and the library users are using the bus, they're gonna, the history tells me anyway, that they're gonna cross there regardless if there's a crosswalk.
Agreed.
So the crosswalk is really being designed to alert motorists that pedestrians may be present. It does provide some protection. There is some opportunity if you zoom in, Brian, there's actually a gap in the center line in that general area.
Yep.
So if you wanted to and were willing to spend the money, you could fit in a small refuge island. I'm not sure if there's a design standard for how big that has to be.
5 feet wide by 6 feet, 5 by 6. So six, the median needs to be at least 6 foot, so. It might be kind of tight, because you assume that these are probably 12-foot panels.
Sure.
Wow, that would be a great idea if it did fit.
Yeah,
Do a
it would be,
refuge.
yeah.
Because then you would only have to cross 2 lanes of traffic
Yep.
and you could wait,
Mhm.
all
Yes.
while still having your flashing lights.
Too tight.
That's
Once you get,
right there.
yeah, once you get to the center.
Oh, I see,
The only place that really looks like it fit is, you know,
Right
closer.
here, driveway,
Yeah,
which is almost too close to the intersection. Yeah, unless you can eke it in right there.
you'd be down here, which you're close to the bus stop, but you're so
Yeah.
close to the intersection.
I think people are gonna leave, they're gonna leave the library and they're gonna go straight across Cormier. They're not going up there. No,
Mhm.
not gonna happen.
Well, if it's agreeable to the committee, I think that would be the recommendation, is we can at least plan for it. If it fits, that's fine. If it doesn't fit, then if it doesn't meet a certain safety standard, if you will, or it's too close to the intersection, or we can't create that refuge island, I think that's something to take into consideration. But at least we know that we're trying to create some kind of mid-block crossing there, knowing the bus stop is there and that people are parking there, and the quickest way to the library is in the middle of the block versus going up or down to either intersection. I think that would be enough direction.
So back to Kim's question. So are we then considering both? Or one or the other?
I think if you're gonna do it, my recommendation is you do it now, don't you think, Brian, as far as an engineering standpoint versus trying to double up on it? Or, you know, going back after the
Yeah,
fact because you
yeah.
recognize, oh, there was a problem here and all these people are crossing mid-block.
What would the goal be to do the intersection first, for sure? And then possibly mid? Or
I'm open to
learn
anything.
more? Because that's not cheap to base it.
It's my view that we kind of decided we were gonna do the intersection and then moved on to the mid-block crossing. So I think we've already decided we're doing the intersection.
That's my question right now. Is that what we decided?
I would make that motion if it needs a motion
Or,
to do the
Intersection and then also look at the
San Luis
mid-block.
Cormier. And then I do, however I would properly say, as long as we're doing one, take a look at both.
well, and my thought too is, I mean, we've got TIP 5, you know, so that potentially would pay for both of them. People are gonna cross there.
Oh, yeah.
There's no doubt. They will cross there.
I wouldn't do it, but other people.
I do.
I
I see you every morning walking
You and
in the
you.
middle of the street.
Yeah.
If there was.
I mean, if you go into a
crossing-
city and you can go, you're gonna, unless they got a jaywalking and you know that they really want you, so you are not gonna go. through it.
I'd say if there was a mid-block crossing there, you would expect most people to use the mid-block crossing versus going to the intersection.
And then are we thinking that as part of it, if we explore the option of the mid-block crossing, are we doing a rapid flashing beacon? Or are we doing this?
I would think, I would think you'd have to at least do the rapid flashing.
Well, some of the challenge with that is I don't know how comfortable the county will be if there is a big slug of people and that hawk system is plugging up a bunch of cars and then it's also affecting when I hit.
I also think that the color in those other two crosswalks catches your attention. So if it's mid-block like that, just coloring the pavement, is that a possibility or not?
It's definitely a possibility, not as easy to do after the fact, because that's actually colored concrete, so that you'd have to tear out all the concrete, and that concrete in there is about 11 inches thick, so it's.
It would be one of those intersections or crosswalks that would have the high-vis markings. So if you've noticed, Brian and his crew have been marking all the high-vis crosswalks the last 2 weeks, maybe.
Yeah, 2 weeks.
So they're really noticeable now.
Great.
That they're the thick laddered line systems.
It's a lot of paint. It's a lot of paint. But the first time, it always is. It does look good. They pop, sure.
Okay, so the motion is to do the intersection.
Add a crosswalk to the east leg of the intersection of San Luis and Cormier. Is that right? I'm reading it off the sheet. And
In addition,
And
Okay,
look at the crosswalk mid-block
mid-block.
with rapid flashing beacons, right? Yeah. We don't have to put it on bituminous pavement.
You do that.
That sounds like an
That's
AI.
my fancy.
You got that from the
That's what you're saying, asphalt
I-
or blacktop. Yes.
Okay, do I have a second to Kim's motion?
I'll second it.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Everybody understands the motion?
Yep.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Okay. Thank you. 6B, consider discuss act on future bike and pet related capital improvement projects.
Okay, just writing notes for myself, so just to move through it. Okay, so in front of you, you have a list of projects that we plan to propose to bring in front of the village board. Nothing set in stone. It's a kind of our first blush at figuring out what our long-term planning looks like for pedestrian accommodations throughout the village. Some of these projects are actual just reconstruct projects. And when I say reconstruct projects, we're fully gutting out the entire road, kind of starting from scratch. The first one I'm going to kind of skip over due to the fact that we've kind of discussed it. We're kind of balls in motion. Another one that's going to occur in 2027, it's not shown in here, I removed it from here, is Morris, because we've already spoken about what we're doing out on Morris. So there's really no change. So I wouldn't really consider it a project. We're leaving it as is. Moving on into 2028. So this is a project that it's kind of a legacy project. I'm trying to think, was it Leroy's project? A little bit of a pet project for Leroy. So currently on Hanson Road, on the north side of Hanson Road, up on my screen there, you'll see there is a sidewalk that goes all the way from Helmuth here, all the way down to Oneida Street. And it terminates at Oneida Street. However, on the south side of the road, there are no pedestrian accommodations. Pedestrian accommodations, there is a section on the bridge deck that allows for sidewalk. But once you get both east and west of Interstate 41, there are no pedestrian accommodations. So what this does, this project actually brings sidewalk from Springhurst, which is here, all the way to 41. And you're probably wondering, why does it only go that far? And I'll touch on that a little bit later because there is a road reconstruct project that takes it east of here. The one thing that I would say with this project is there's a lot of challenges with existing contours or changes in grade, elevation, topography. I don't know what's the easiest way to explain. You have ditches, you have things like that. So there'll be a lot of retaining walls and railing, and there's a lot of existing utilities out there. If you'll notice, there's a lot of fiber optics, stuff like that. So not as much of just, an easy project of just going in and installing something. But that's what the project is, so it's a very expensive project. I don't know off the top of my head, but it's just shy of $1 million to do the sidewalk installation. So it's not a cheap project. And it's just due to the fact that if you ever drive through that area, retaining walls will need to be installed, railing, utilities will need to be relocated.
And that's only
It's only $241. Yep.
for now.
Yep. That's a very, very expensive project. With that being said, I bounced this idea off from Steve Burr, our village engineer. Does it make sense to do that, or do we look to install another rapid flashing beacon at the pedestrian generator, which is generally the apartment complex? If I do see people walking, generally it seems like they're kind of coming from Quick Trip general area and coming to the apartments. And it's very unique because even though there's a sidewalk on the north side, they'll walk in the street on the south side.
Absolutely.
And just the extra 50 feet of steps to go to the actual sidewalk to feel safe, it doesn't happen.
Even if it's snow.
Yeah.
or they're on the street.
Correct. They walk on the street. They're not concerned, which good for them, I guess, for having the confidence, but hopefully everyone's driving attentively and sees these people. So yeah, that's that project. I don't know if there's any questions, comments, concerns.
Well, let's say it's $1 million to get it to Highway 41. Well, then we all know, once you get off that bridge decking area with the sidewalk, that side's gonna be
That
as
side-
much, even more.
Correct, because you have utility poles, we'll likely have to acquire right of way or permanent easements. Because the right of way does get very skinny and,
Yeah.
I mean, as you can see, once you get down in here, yeah, I mean, when we start plowing snow from center line of the road up to here and the sidewalks here, and then we expect culverts to, get rid of the snow, my phone will ring. They aren't gonna be happy, but we do have other places like that in the village. People figure it out, but it's not fun. And that similar situation kind of carries through, that there is not a ton of right of way there. Things are very, very tight.
Is there room at Wendy's to put one in?
There is actually, yeah, it's tight. Let me see. Let's do brown dot.
I think Wendy's would be tighter than Culver's.
It is. Back of curb, say there. You got about 7.5 feet, so. It's tight, and you gotta think you have to have at least minimum 6 feet if you're adjacent to a curb for sidewalk. So you can get it to fit, but all the utility boxes that are in there, it's gonna be, it's doable, but is the juice worth the squeeze? I don't know. That's for us to discuss here. It's gonna be a huge task.
When do we have access to financial support from others versus the village paying for it? When does that happen? When a new street is being redone or?
Road
When do you go
reconstruction is
after-
actually.
I don't know, grants or.
Yeah,
Um,
Hanson Road in particular,
2033.
that section is considered an urban collector. So we would be eligible for certain state and federal grants to support projects, but again, you would have to describe the need and the time would have to be right. I don't know that we're necessarily there yet per se, and it's gotta get scored out, and then it gets ranked amongst all the other projects within our metropolitan area. And then,
So you apply, you
Yeah.
hope.
And previously working at the DOT, I mean, they look at accident statistics. So unless there's someone that got hit, fatalities, unfortunately, that's how they do it. I'm not saying I agree with that, but that's how a lot of times when they look at ranking. That's the unfortunate truth, right or wrong. It's more of a reactive grading than a proactive grading.
yeah, unless there's some documented evidence to suggest that a change needs to happen retroactive or when you're retrofitting infrastructure, you're better off waiting until full road reconstruction and you're applying for the grant to
Yeah.
support the entire road to rebuild.
When did you say it was 2033?
2033 is where it's in the CFP currently. It's let's see here, second one from the bottom. You'll notice the pavement in that segment of roadway is starting to show its age. You give it, another 7 years, it'll be showing its age. You can kind of see the patching that's already been done on it. And of course, the infrastructure under the street is. at
This
the end of
is
its
my
service line.
opinion. I would look more at the rapid flashing beacon to get people across the street. I wouldn't look at that to get them to Highway 41 for right now, because
You saying right by the apartments?
yes,
Dutchman's?
because
It's called, no.
You're gonna spend $1 million and they're still gonna be walking in the
Right.
street,
Yeah.
right, you're gonna spend all that money, they're still gonna walk in the street.
because it's not all the way through.
Is that what it lines on?
It does.
Yeah, there's like,
You know, it's not like, we do it all the time. We walk. And you're pretty safe. There's higher speed there without question. Oh, no, Pioneer's pretty high speed too. I noticed they put the signs up to let people know how fast they're going.
It's too smooth.
Yeah, well, it's too much. It's too true. That's part of it, but there's too much distance too in between with no stop sign.
Right.
You go a long ways there. You go all the way out to Packerland. Right, so they cruise. But I guess my point was, and I get, like you're saying, they have budgets, right? So if you have somebody that has issues, you need to take care of that concern. So I get part of that. But on the other hand, we really haven't had any issues with injuries. We look at those people and you think, wow, why wouldn't you get on the other side? But I watch people every time I walk, and sometimes at night where there's 3 people abreast and they got black on and they're walking with the traffic.
Yeah,
So some of it's education and being careful, or, I don't know.
It's tough because we just
It
said on
is.
Cormier, people are gonna dash across that street. So we're gonna do something. And I'm not saying it's apples to apples. That's
No,
way more traffic. There's way more generators, way more. Here we're trying to solve kind of a limited problem, right?
Mhm.
One community that's walking along there primarily, there's probably more. I mean, if budgets were unlimited, I'd say, why wouldn't we do it? But you
Right.
just described really considerable things we need to think about that would make that very expensive.
Yep.
And cause a lot of distress from the properties along there. They'd be really unhappy.
It'll also beg the question too, I mean, if we do want to explore further is, this sidewalk here is gonna be in people's rear yards. To expect people to remove the snow from that sidewalk, they're not gonna be happy with us. And do we want to add additional sidewalk for our crews that,
I was gonna say, I would feel like that's almost unfair to ask them to, because they
Correct.
literally have to load up a snow blower and drive around the block to go
Yes.
do it.
Yep.
Because those are all fenced and like, it's gonna be, like you said, 10 feet probably above their yard.
Yep.
So to ask them to go back there and clear that sidewalk, I feel like wouldn't be very reasonable.
I would agree with that.
and I understand what you're saying, Kim, but I look at it as they have an opportunity to get on the sidewalk. There's a lot of areas in this village where you don't even have an opportunity to get on the sidewalk. So sometimes you just have to take responsibility for your own body and self.
I think offering the crossing is, I don't wanna say a nice compromise, but at least it's something to try
Yeah.
to like encourage them to cross that. I understand even when they leave Quick Trip, they may still go back
Still walk
up
up
in
those-
that direction.
Yep.
But maybe if they get enough of a habit coming down that way, then that would just become habit to cross back over and go back like, the way you came. So, I mean, there is a lot of foot traffic there, but I can't see spending $1 million and it not even getting, it's not gonna solve the problem because you still
They're still
are,
gonna do it.
it's gonna be another million on the other side. It doesn't even.
Which unreasonably inconvenient.
Yeah.
For some of the homeowners.
Yes.
It's pretty much, I see more of it in the winter, when the snow's on the ground. You'll see people walk on the grass. They'll stay up on the grass and walk on the grass up there if they want to stay on that side. So,
It's obviously a lot of money. Rapid flashing beacon, well, 3 years ago was about 25,000. I would say in today's dollars, it's probably gonna be 35 to 40,000, just because this will be kind of potentially lumped on a project as its own. I mean, that leaves for quite a bit of other money that could be used elsewhere. Maybe in areas of great priority, but for Leroy, this was kind of a pet project, so I don't wanna dismiss someone else's priority, but
Thank you for keeping track of that.
yeah.
It's just a
Yeah.
tough one. It is tough.
it is, and you had visibility of it, just like I do, where you drive that road a lot, you see those people.
I honestly think even if we have the sidewalk, if it's not cleared, and I could see that they'll still walk in the street. It's just, they're comfortable with it.
Yep.
And I don't know if we'll change that.
If that's in 2033, how far could we kick this can down the road to bring it back up?
Well, this section of Hanson though is in 2028.
2027, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And this was
Other
just,
sections in 2033.
and I should say that's 2028 just based off from, I'm just carrying stuff forward from previous years. So it's not like there's no sound reason why it has to be in 2028.
Yeah.
It's more of, hey,
It was a
This
retro.
is where it's.
right, it was 4 years ago, we probably said, oh, let's kick that out 5 years. Well, it's just, we keep getting closer to it.
Well,
Yeah.
So how would that look from your perspective? Who would you hear from and what would be the support levels for it?
I think, when you explain the whole situation to people, I think that they would think we're nuts if we spend $1 million to get people to here and they can't go any further. It doesn't make any sense.
And I think people that live there would be,
So I don't know, if we're gonna do anything in 2028 with this section, I would do that rapid flashing beacon. That's, would be my, I would not put that sign.
The other thing to keep in mind too is, maybe others have, but no one has ever, aside from Leroy, I haven't heard from anyone. It's not like the apartment manager said, hey, you know, our tenants are requesting this, they don't feel safe. There's not saying Leroy's thought process isn't valid, but you know, we do have other areas where people have asked. I mean, you think of Skylar, you know, areas like that, like people are asking us, can you do more? Can you do more? And we haven't done anything. And this isn't really a spot, the exception of Leroy, that anybody's really asked for anything. Do we see it as a potential need? Yeah, you know, you could need it, but do we have to do it?
But I don't think Leroy had visibility like you're giving us on the cost.
Right.
We never had that discussion, what it could cost to do this.
True.
I'm
It
going
was
to
just-
defer the conversation to a later date. I don't know about
Yeah.
others.
So if I'm hearing everyone correctly, at least the majority of people, that what we want to do for 2028 is kind of rescope that section of Hanson Road from a sidewalk construction, basically from Springhurst to I-41. We take that out, we replace it with an intersection improvement near the apartments on Springhurst, right?
Mhm.
And that's the project. 2023's project, that can stay put. And that's a full road reconstruct. So that'd be very similar to Morris Avenue, where when that road comes up, we start talking about scope and conversations with the neighbors and the community about, okay, this is an urban collector. As part of our policy, we ask when we reconstruct a road, should we be considering these other amenities? Because that would be the time to do it.
That's a funky section there too, because you've got that northern lane going westward that kind of goes into nothing. You know,
Needs to
that then everyone.
Yeah, and so, but some people use it to merge in, other people use it to take a right, and no one really knows what people are gonna do, so to me, that's a really sketchy stretch.
I used to look at Carmelitas at Red Oak.
Oh, there you go.
So I think that 2033 project can stay just because it recognizes it's a reconstruction, it's an urban collector, it fits within our policy that says when we have those projects come up, we talk about it, we discern over it, and then we determine at that time what that scope looks like.
Well, and ultimately, you know, speaking on the 2033 project, you know, we can definitely look at traffic volume. You know, right now, this is a 4-lane road from Ramada to Oneida. Does it need to be 4 lanes? We don't know that, but that's what's out there now. You might be able to potentially get rid of one of the lanes, which would allow for a whole lot of real estate out there to fit that sidewalk. It could be as easy as just changing some of the signal timing out here in order to allow this intersection to better flow. But I mean, I've sat at the intersection. If there's more than, say, 6 cars queued on each side, so 12 cars total, I'd say that's a lot. Usually this is not, I mean, you're gonna have different peaks that are gonna be different, but I would just say on average, if you have much more than 10 cars, it's abnormal.
Depends how quick Culver is getting them out of the lot.
True.
The busiest part of that whole road.
One thing that Brian just said in sort of in passing, he talked about Skylark and there are requests from other constituencies to do things, and there really are requests for this one. And everything else aside, I think we in the village board have the responsibility to respond to what the community wants. And if we have limited resources, it would be better to spend it where the community wants us to spend it.
So what you're saying, Kyle, is push this down the road and put that rapid flashing beacon on Packerland and West Paulson?
Yeah, and spend that $1 million someplace else.
Well, it
Well,
wouldn't,
yeah.
or just do the rapid
Or spend
flashing
money.
beacon, but, yeah,
Yeah, I wouldn't disagree with that at all.
I'm just gonna put to defer it right now. Is there any preferences to how far? I mean, our other project's in 2033, so I would say after that. So maybe you go 2035 and talk about it then again.
My thought is whenever you're gonna do a major rehabilitation or a reconstruction on that section of Hanson, that's when
Okay.
it should fit in that schedule. So I don't see this group anyway, unless a future group wants to bring it forward in years. But at this point, I think you're really just kind of looking at when are you gonna do a major project out there to warrant to justify the retrofit.
Move on to the next one. Just so we can carry along. So Ridge Road.
This is the good one.
Yeah, this is
Oh, it
this is gonna be a fun project. So Ridge Road, between Cormier and Anderson. So Anderson being kind of on the south side of the school, north side of Woodside, went all the way up to Cormier. Part of the intersection at Cormier here, if you guys actually pay attention to how the traffic flows at Cormier Ridge, it's kind of broken. Not really well designated turn lanes. What lane am I supposed to be in? So what we do plan to clean that up. Pedestrian accommodations, they're there already. Aside from if we want to, do something more than what's there now. But, right now, there already is 2 5-foot sidewalks on both sides of the roadway. There is parking, lanes. I don't know if there's a strong desire from the committee to add, change, modify. Likely a lot of these intersections don't make sense to have a rapid flashing beacon because there's crossing guards. That's a crossing guard is far better than any sort of stationary device that we can put in place.
I think that was our discussion on Sandra Lane. If we tried to do that, then it would require them to have a crossing guard and then an extra expense for the school.
And the one thing I would say is these projects, as we get closer, much like we did for Morris, we don't necessarily need to determine the scope hard and fast right now, because I'll bring it in front of the committee again once we get closer to design to make sure that we're designing it for now and try to design it for the future. So, unless there are any questions on that, I'm gonna move on.
Just really quickly, Brian, if you want to just point out, just for the committee, no decision really is needed to put section of Cormier and Ridge. There's just so everybody's kind of aware of the crosswalk condition there. So there's a crosswalk that kind of has a weird 30-degree angle coming off of it. That's not something you would typically try to design for. So when that project comes up, that intersection will not only be looked at, but that crosswalk there has got to be addressed as well.
We're gonna adjust it a little bit this year. So this kind of sidewalk.
He's gonna slowly move it over
Well-
to notices.
If you're blind, you don't necessarily know where the lines are.
There you go.
So that's the issue.
This concrete actually was recently replaced. So it's all new. So this pavement marking here is over a half gone. And it's very worn here. So we're gonna straight line it this year from here straight across. There still isn't an adequate curb ramp here, but when we go through and do the project, we'll get things cleaned up. So they're a little bit more standard. Right now, this curb ramp kind of really only allows you to dump to the south, for the lack of a better term, not really to the west.
Oh, yeah.
It kind of comes down and forces you towards that direction. Yeah.
Where normally this would be either slid over or there would be 2 ramps, but we'll get that cleaned up. When we get to that
I just thought it was
time. It's interesting. I'm finding a lot of interesting stuff as we talk about pavement work.
They've worked for the last 40 years.
You're right. Okay, so moving on, Marina Lane sidewalk installation. So this is kind of a continuation of the Fox River Trail. So right now the Fox River Trail kind of peters out, we'll say, in this general area. What this does is it grabs and puts sidewalk on the north side of Marina Lane, all the way up to the sidewalk that's on the east side of Broadway. So there is senior housing that's going in here. It's going to kind of allow for connectivity for those seniors to be able to move around and allow our river trail to connect up to Broadway and allow people to continue to go
believe the developer's taking care of their section of sidewalk as part of the development.
I'm fairly
We're
certain.
taking care of the sidewalk basically.
As an aside, on that intersection where Marina Circle intersects with Marina Lane, is it?
Mhm.
That's unmarked. Okay, you know that. You know a lot of, it's a little
Yeah.
crazy in that intersection.
I haven't seen a crazy, but I'm aware that it's unmarked. Has there been, because generally your movements here kind of all predominantly, very few people, come to the south here. I'm not saying that they don't. Are you talking this intersection here? or
I'm
up-
saying the people
here?
on Marina Circle, because it's unmarked,
Oh, here.
think they have
Marina Lane.
right of way
Hmm.
in turning left to get up to Broadway.
Gotcha.
And I'm on that, not every day, but
When you say unmarked, you mean the stop signs?
so the yield with.
And they don't have
There's nothing on that intersection.
Yeah, we're uncontrolled. We have, I would say, about half of our intersections of the village are unmarked
Okay,
or uncontrolled.
cars on the right have right away.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
I don't think people are thinking about that when they come out of there.
They're
But
supposed to.
That is up to you. I was
Yeah.
just bringing it to your attention.
Yeah, that's one
That's
thing
not the
that
purpose of this
uh,
meeting.
is on Steve and my to do is we do want to go through the village in quadrants one of these winters and kind of go through our signage because our signage is very unique. We have areas where we have stop signs where there's not actually intersections. So, but then we have intersections where there's no stop signs. So, but
I'm surprised you find that there, because it's not like they get up to high speed there that they wouldn't.
It's only
stop
at
the
certain
yield.
times, beginning of the day and end of the day.
Oh, they're in a hurry.
It's probably so not busy that.
Yeah.
it's just-
They're just so used to being able to do it, but then busier times of day, they forget.
okay, you have a
Just turn.
T intersection, so generally the vehicle traffic that's coming into the T is the one that should be stopping.
Yeah.
Whether or not that's occurring.
Yeah.
Don't know. So,
But we like the sidewalk, so
Yes,
okay,
there we go.
yes, we'll move on.
fantastic.
Keep it moving along. Arts Lane, so if anybody knows where Arts Lane is a lane, that's probably a good way to say it, glorified driveway. It is only one car width wide. This is a road that we annexed in from the town of Lawrence. You can notice people's driveways are wider than the street. Currently, if you've been watching any of the planning commission, village board, currently there's a development that's planned to go in this open field here, which will then take the Sand Acres Trail, get it up to this general area. There is a easement, I think it's like 30 or 50 feet wide, in order to get those pedestrians up to Arts Lane. The unique thing is now, you put pedestrians out onto Arts Lane, which is a single car width wide, and there's no accommodations. Granted, low speed, low volume. So not a huge concern, but at some point in time, this roadway will need to be built to village standards. It's very unique. I mean, if there was ever, any sort of emergency need for a structure fire or anything down here, it's not a real great situation. So,
Around in the field.
yeah, so that's the scope of that project. What we would probably do is, of course, make it 2 lanes. I don't know exactly what the pedestrian accommodations would look like. Of course, we bring that in front of the committee. If we do a wider paved shoulder, if we put in an actual sidewalk, it's going to be an adjustment no matter what we do for the residents that live on the street. No matter what we do, it's not gonna be the right thing. I can tell you that. So they're very used to living in their very rural feeling setting, and this is kind of give them more of the city feel.
They're gonna be surrounded by the subdivision.
All those darn people walking in front of my house are on the trail. It's gonna create crime.
Yep.
Love watching people walk by.
Yep.
Now, is that like a high priority reconstruct,
No,
Brian?
No.
That's,
no, I mean, if we had to score that, the pavement condition isn't great.
Right.
But it's such low speed, we wouldn't be doing anything. I'd have to double check this, but the sewer and water was installed, I think, in 1999. So it's not that old. So we wouldn't actually be installing any sewer or water. It would mainly just be making the road wider. Low, I would say very low priority.
In 2028, or are you thinking of moving that?
It could move wherever. The reason that I tossed it in there at 2028, that's because it would kind of piggyback the developer when they
Okay.
put their accommodations in, then we could at least get people to their final destination.
This project also coincides to some degree, there's a project on this list, Ridge Road sidewalk, Main Ave to Sand Acres. So
Yes.
Brian, if you want to just kind of slide over in the map.
Yeah, so that's a legacy project that
Yeah.
carried on. I don't know where the thought was configured about it, but right now within Sand Acres Park, there's a paved trail. That's actually a concrete sidewalk and a paved trail. It's
I
sidewalk.
think it's sidewalk. and-
Yeah, so the thought was to take the sidewalk and run it on the east side of Ridge Road all the way up to Main Ave. One of the projects that we'll be touching on is the Main Ave extension. I don't know, Rex, if you feel as though as if we were to connect this to Arts, if that's really a need, being on the east side of Ridge Road, having a sidewalk there. But yes, I mean, you kind of have two pedestrian accommodations that kind of parallel each other, that kind of serve a similar purpose.
My opinion,
Yeah.
I've said this before, with the trail, if the trail goes in, which is only going to be, 100 yards to the east of where Ridge Road and Main connect.
Mhm.
To me, anyone on the trail, that's a way for them to get to the park if they don't want to walk in the roadway. Everyone's probably gonna have a different opinion. I'm not seeing the need, because we've got that big trailer also on Sand Acres Drive. I don't see the need for it, but I mean, I get it. Always taking people off the road and putting them on a sidewalk is safer per se, but I don't see, if you're looking for my opinion, I don't see the need for it on Ridge.
That's my-
You'd have to
that's my
acquire,
thought
so
process.
how does that work as far as?
Yeah, so it would have
property
to,
owners?
there's enough right of way in front of these homes. This boulevard here would need to be removed.
Okay,
So that boulevard comes out. That's really gonna change the feel of what this road feels like. The road will have to slide over and the sidewalk will be, near where the road is.
Like I said, I mean,
It's a lot of work.
My opinion on it.
It's a project that I carried forward. It was always in our plan.
Kyle, that's been on our original plan since probably that area was built in around 2005 to 2010. I mean, literally from the beginning. Yeah.
So Brian, the homes that are
So, I mean, I
south of all this parking lot,
Never been a priority, but.
who's gonna shovel the sidewalk in front of those homes?
Under village policy, they would have to take care of that because it's not connecting to the school. So that's a policy consideration that should be weighed too, right? So we have maintenance needs that'll have to be maintained on the sidewalk. Another consideration that's counter to that argument is the trail itself will not be maintained in the winter.
Right.
So if you're looking for connectivity for winter months, you will not have it because the trail will be just snow covered and ice covered. So those are all considerations you have to evaluate in determining that policy.
But what people are you expecting to use? that
that's what I was just gonna.
I mean, there's nothing, there's no residential at this point, very few houses north of Main Street. And so the trail or the sidewalk would go to Main Street. Who are you building it for? Like what's the use of that sidewalk?
Right.
I don't,
I would say
You know,
the
there's
primary
a-
use is probably more recreational leisure than anything else, right? Not necessarily transportation related, but are you gonna have those few instances where somebody needs the trail to get to work, I suppose, or wherever they're gonna go? But I would suspect it's gonna be largely recreational more than anything else.
Because if we're looking at that, then I think of Sand Acres.
appears there's a lot of older people in there too, besides younger people, but then we put the cross, right, to get across Sand Acres. Then you gotta walk on the street to get to the park. There's no sidewalk. I mean, you have a trail up to that road, but then they're gonna walk on the street to get to the park. And there's more people gonna walk from there than there's gonna walk from Ridge Road back to the park, I would think, traffic wise, foot wise. Especially to your point, if you're putting that trail through the new subdivision, or the new area that's gonna be built to Main Street, right?
Arts and then arts.
The other thing that probably should get pointed out is the development that's gonna go on that property falls under the village's updated subdivision code that was adopted 3-4 years ago now. They have to put sidewalks on all their streets. So there will be sidewalk on each street within that subdivision. At some point, that subdivision, if the developer has their interests met, there's the old van farm on Main.
Yeah.
Their goal is to eventually acquire that and extend their development on that parcel, which would then extend the road to basically Spearway. And that's where they're hoping to have their connectivity to the main avenue.
Well, that would be nice then, because like you said, that's already in there, so you'd be able to easily connect where that's gonna come up in and
Yeah.
go around.
So you will have connectivity from the trail into the development and at some point within the development to Main Avenue. But again, that's, I don't know, however many
How many
years
years
ago.
away? So what do you need from us tonight?
I guess the biggest question that I would have is, do we feel as though South Ridge Road, adding a sidewalk on there, is there a need for it right now?
I would say no.
Okay. And then Arts Lane, we can definitely wait with Arts Lane until, honestly, wait until the road gets to be in a little bit worse condition, until there is a true need for reconstruct. The other thing too to keep in mind, a project in the middle there is the Main Ave Trail and Sidewalk Extension. So right now, Main Ave Trail terminates right here at Ridge Road. You guys may recall we applied for a TAP grant, which is a Transportation Alternatives Program, to run this 10-foot trail all the way to Arts Lane, which this is Arts Lane here. From here, we're actually going to pick up with a 5-foot sidewalk, and you're going to go, well, why a 5-foot sidewalk? We have a lot of things going on here. There's a ton of utilities. We're going to be building some 4 to 6 foot tall retaining walls because there's such a change in grade in order to get things to work out. The other thing is on the bridge here, it's only a 5-foot sidewalk. So you can put a 10-foot trail as long as you want, but to go through and make this bridge 10 feet wide, it's expensive. You're probably millions, because you have to make the abutment of the bridge bigger, you have to set a whole nother girder on the bridge.
I think it's fine.
Yeah, the juice isn't worth the squeeze. So that project, Main Ave Trail and Sidewalk, that is, like I said, it is a TAP grant project. I applied for the TAP grant. The project, the way it's set up, does have to occur over 2 years, 2029, 2030. And the reason for that is the dollar amount that's in our metro region for planning. There's only so much money, and you can only take so much money at once. The good thing is it was only us and then a project in Bellevue that applied for that TAP grant. So hopefully we do better than them, but we'll see.
Is it the same? Do you go before a committee at the
Yeah.
county level?
Yeah, at the county level. Yeah.
And they went transportation.
There's a transportation subcommittee that it goes in front of, and then it goes through PD&T, which is planning, development, and transportation. So then it goes in front of the county board. So that's that project. That's an 80-20 split, 80% federal funds, 20% village funds. So
Just to get access to us, if you're, I don't care if it's 5 feet. That's a big deal. Here we talk about people being injured, and I think of that more so every time you get to a roundabout. and how the people get across.
Oh
Them
my
roundabouts
gosh.
without getting hit,
That is
especially at
awesome.
2 lane. Because nobody stops.
So then the balance of the projects, I think those are like the bulk ones that we kind of wanted some direction on. The balance of the projects are generally tied to some major reconstruct. And that those are scheduled kind of within the parameters of the remainder of our work. So mainly like home grid reconstruct, that's a more of a surface issue, so that we're addressing, correct? That's that issue with the broken pavement. But there's other things like Morris Avenue that are tied to the reconstruction because of utility work. So because they fall within that urban collector, urban arterial parameter, they're identified as future projects that we have to take into consideration. So no decisions at this point are needing to be made.
Cormier and Shady,
That would be the only one that I would
Yep.
mention that Brian will probably want to talk about.
Yeah, I'll touch on that one real quick. Last month I brought that one in front of Village Ford only due to the fact that currently there's HISUP, which is a Highway Safety Improvement Program. There's grant funding, that's a 90-10 split, which is 90% federal funds, 10% village funds. At Cormier and Shady, there's been uptick within accidents there, right angle crashes. There's been 17 in the last 5 years. So I reached out to the highway engineer at the DOT to kind of say, hey, do you think this would be a good project? He said, yep, absolutely. Currently, we're looking at proposing a mini roundabout at that intersection, one of the first in the village. Mini roundabout, yep, they're throughout the state. I can't even think of the areas where they're most located, but there's some in De Pere. There's compact roundabouts if you ever go on Highway 54 through Seymour. There's 2 of them that jump up there.
They're real low. You don't have that big mound in the middle,
I
right?
was
Correct.
gonna say, so it's really just
And
like a.
single lane, isn't it?
They're single
Not
lane.
double lane.
Yep, it's single lane, and if a semi needs to drive over it, they just drive over it. But with your everyday car, you don't want to drive over it because you're not going to be nice to its suspension. But not only does it allow for the limitation of those right angle crashes or T-bone crashes, but it also allows for traffic calming. One of the biggest concerns that we hear is people are going too fast in Cormier. My thought is hopefully we can get the funding for it, try it here, and then continue to look at the intersection of maybe Cormier and Pilgrim, because that intersection is very challenging for people to navigate also. So I wouldn't necessarily, unless we were getting the federal funds, wouldn't necessarily recommend this project just because the pavement's in such good condition yet. But yeah.
So Brian, here's my only question for you. I see kids on bikes going back and forth across Cormier. How does that work with the mini roundabout?
The same as just a regular roundabout. So there is still pedestrian accommodations. Actually, I have a conceptual layout of it. Oh,
Yeah, just from the 2 parks there.
Yep.
this is super high level, a very conceptual layout at that intersection of what it would look like. There is sidewalk right now. It's not shown in this aerial photo, but you guys may recall my right spot here. Yes, there is sidewalk here, but there is not any sidewalk on the south side of Cormier or on either side of Shady.
So this is gonna be a stupid question, but that's okay.
I can't wait to hear it.
I know.
Yeah.
So I mean,
Sure.
you're talking, you need to slow things down. What's prevent? What are the issues with just putting another 4-way stop there?
4-way stops don't calm traffic, they actually usually speed traffic up because people try to make up for the time that they've lost for stopping. Yep.
It's so interesting.
It'll create more traffic issues by creating the 4-way stop versus allowing the dominant traffic, which is Cormier, to flow straight through, versus creating a condition where you're stopping Cormier to allow the subdominant traffic on Shady to pass. You're just gonna create more issues.
So the 4-way stop, you have to stop when there's no cars coming the other way.
Right.
You know, with a roundabout, you can just go through it. So
You just have to slow down.
Yeah.
The other thing too is just the visual appearance of Cormier. I mean, you turn off from Parkland onto Cormier, you have nothing but a sea of pavement in a highway. Or you start putting obstructions in it and stuff like that, you gotta make people feel uncomfortable. That's what makes people slow down. You get cars parked on the both sides of Cormier, or, say someone's having a rummage sale, people slow right down because they're uncomfortable. And you gotta make things uncomfortable for the motorists in order to slow them down.
Isn't the other idea behind the roundabout though, is that you have less severe accidents?
For sure.
Because
Yes.
if somebody's not pulling out of that intersection, not paying
Right.
attention, you're hitting them sideways.
There is no right angle type crashes or T-bone type crashes in a roundabout. They're all just usually glances off of each other.
Yeah.
Could there be more accidents? Yeah, there could be. Will the accidents likely result in injury? No, usually not. Usually airbags aren't even deployed in a roundabout when there's an accident.
The reason I say that is even if you go over by us, right, and you get by the school at Pioneer, and you get on, all around there, to be honest with you, I never go through, I always let the car go first. People don't stop. They don't stop. They're used to driving them roads, and they'll kind of slow down a little bit, but sometimes they don't even slow down. They go right straight to the stop sign.
I drive
So
through
to
that
me, a
intersection
roundabout-
every day, literally every day, either on my car or a bike. And if you're on Shady, you're crossing Cormier, the cars are coming they're coming fast, and there's sometimes 15 of them. You wait and wait and wait, and it clears from one side, and then they're coming from the other side. So people just they're shooting gaps.
Yep, if you sit there and watch it, it's people that are trying to weigh out the risk versus reward. Okay, that's what they're doing the whole time, so. This hopefully will try to alleviate it.
And you could just replicate it by program.
Yeah, yep, just cut one of the legs off.
Just keep.
Yep, so this is,
Are there flashing, is that one of the intersections?
Yeah, there's
right now there's
flashing
flashing.
Yeah,
beacon there.
so would do those stay then in a row? I guess
No,
that,
those-
like,
those
those
will
go
go-
away, right? Yeah.
yeah, the
I
flashing.
was trying to
stop sign
picture
will
that. I
go
was
away.
like, how would that work?
What is the signage? Because this is a residential feature, right? That's houses and parks all around it. So you're trying to enter from one way, but there could be kids coming on the crosswalk the way you're not looking to enter what is the signage?
So the stop signs are on Shady Lane. There's no stop signs in Cormier.
I'm sorry, I mean, if we
The proposed?
install this.
Yeah, so it'd be the same as a roundabout, so all directions are yield, and you're always yielding to the vehicle to the left.
Right.
But you're
Kids
thinking
can be in
about
the
the kids
crosswalk, right,
crossing.
to where you enter, but
And that's one thing that I think hopefully educational wise, I mean, just educating students and how to navigate roundabouts. I mean, it's not like crossing a normal intersection, and
No.
hopefully at the school level, maybe they're not as much as we don't have many of them in Ashwaubenon, but there's definitely an educational component with it.
So the whole center's for whole concrete then?
It is. It's just
I actually think
big.
this is better. Because if you have the ones where you have all this nice plantings and everything,
Yeah.
you can't see the other side.
Right.
Now, there might be intent behind that, not the
There
serious
is.
side.
There is,
Yeah.
yeah.
But here, at least, to your point, Kim, you could see somebody in the crosswalk.
Yep.
I was just saying to her before, you go to these where you get double lane,
Yeah.
I feel sorry for somebody to try and cross that. Because you can cross the first time because that car sees you, but you don't know if the other car's in the center lane when you got your nose out there.
The Pier one's the crazy.
Oh, yeah, that's the first one I think of.
But we'd want to partner with the school when we do this, right? To
Yes.
just find out how they can notify and alert families and kids.
Yeah, the good thing is, this project's out in 2031,
Oh,
that's
okay.
literally following the DOT's timeline. DOT's projects, it's a 6-year cycle from planning to building. So that's why it is so far out. Ultimately, if we do get the funding, then we probably start having those educational components. It's possible that we don't even get the funding, and to install one of these, it's about 800,000. I couldn't see installing one, only due to the fact that the pavement there is not in bad condition. So I can't see tearing it out,
You would be replacing.
Right. you're replacing concrete that's still good. I don't want to wipe away that there is still a problem here. There's still a problem. So we've talked about just different traffic calming measures that we may look to implement on Cormier to try to slow cars down. So whether it's giving people that pinch, feel, so putting drums out in the middle of the road in order to get people to feel uncomfortable.
So for this, we'd essentially say, if there's funding,
Yep.
this would happen in 31, otherwise it would be TBD.
Correct.
So I live in that block. I can see that from my driveway. And I will tell you, just my observation, when they put those lights in, people weren't using them and didn't know how to use them, but they do now. They use them a lot more and they're figuring out how to use them. So, at first it's gonna be strange. People are gonna say, well, I don't know how to do this, and they're not gonna like it, but they'll figure it out.
It's changing.
Yeah.
Since Mary had to leave, I'll just kind of walk through the agenda as the ex officio member. But any other questions, thoughts, comments on the capital improvement plan? Anything at this point? So this plan would get in combination with other projects is being presented to the village board in July. They kind of more or less just kind of consent to the capital improvement plan with directive to staff that projects that are scheduled for 2027 be incorporated into the budget for consideration later in the year. They don't finalize 2027 until the budget's actually adopted in November. Is there any need to come back to committee between now and when the board does anything? There's no outstanding projects that we need to address next year anyway. Okay.
No, this is, to be honest with you, I don't know if we've ever done this before. At least in my time here, where we had an idea what projects were coming in the next 5 years or 6 years. This is the first time.
Well, it was always sort of in the background. We knew about it, but I don't know that it
Not
was
just
presented to us.
This
Not
organization
this kind of
level is
detail.
much appreciated.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. Just the fact that you brought it to us, I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Okay, if there's no other questions, we'll move on to the next item, which is item C, which is just an update on communication education strategies regarding electric bicycles. I sent out a digital copy of this. You have a paper copy. We had Sarah, our comm specialist, produce this brochure with public safety. So there's over 500 copies that were made. They're distributed at all village facilities, community center. And then our public safety officers have it as well. They have stacks of them in their squad cars. And so when they meet with kids that are operating bikes inappropriately or an illegal e-bike or e-moto, if you will, they hand that out to the parents. They are actively stopping kids and doing enforcement as time allows and as they are available. And there are citations that are being issued. So there are a lot of kids that are operating illegal e-bikes, and so we can't catch them all at all times in all locations, but our public safety department is aware of that. We've been doing social media blitz campaigns, getting this information out as well. So there's some graphics that go out on social media from time to time. And then our school resource officers are also incorporating this into their curriculum. I believe it's 3rd grade, if I'm not mistaken, is when they do bike safety. And so they're talking quite a bit to them about the electric bikes as well, just kind of going back out.
Do we then put this also on Facebook but I don't even know how to use it, but is this put on like Facebook?
Yep. Okay. So this graphic has been kind of modified. So this graphic in the brochure is modified. Our graphic on social media includes the legal e-bikes and the illegal bikes.
I mean, that piece is super. Yeah. As far as my only concern is we don't have anything, or we aren't discussing scooters.
So scooters is going to be a separate brochure that's next on our list. So, so we're just dealing with the e-bikes right now, but scooters is definitely on the list. We still are seeing kids operate scooters. Now, the scooters are legal in certain respects in certain areas and so on and so forth. But there again lies the problem where there are devices that are being sold that don't necessarily meet the definition of an electric scooter in accordance with state law. So it's kind of hard to enforce at that point. Electric bicycles actually a little bit easier to enforce because they have to have tags and stickers on them. The scooters do not.
Are there vendors in the village selling e-bikes, motorcycles? I know the hardware store had some for a while, but I haven't seen them.
Maybe,
I don't remember seeing them last time I was
yeah,
there.
To my knowledge, any legitimate bicycle store is only selling class 1, 2, or 3 bikes. Would like a Walmart or hardware store sell an illegal bike? I don't know. It's possible.
Because if there were places in the village that were selling bikes, they should have some bikes.
Like, I think the biggest thing you're gonna run into in town is gonna be more of things like, I mean, you can go to Costco and get that, where again, like it's, illegal, or it's legal if you're of age, which I actually didn't know that until I saw that, so. Good to know, because that's what I thought, like, the ones that look more like
Oh,
this,
the
but I mean, like,
mopeds.
I'll be honest, we have a lot of people that take them to work, like, that's becoming a very common mode of transportation for people to.
For sure.
And the
That's
graphics
expensive
are
market.
strictly for demonstration
A lot of
purposes.
employees
You
use their cars,
You could, I guess, in theory, find a bike that looks just like this, that would fall into the classifications of a class 1, 2, or 3 bike. So this is just what we commonly see
Yes.
that don't.
Yep.
That meet that definition.
Yeah,
The
but
key
some of them
thing
do.
is motor size, so an electric bicycle has to be no more than 750 watts peak power for it to be even considered an electric. Doesn't even necessarily mean that that will be considered an e-bike, but if it's anything over that, it's definitely not an electric bicycle. And so you'll see places marketing like 750 watts, peak power 1800 watts. That's still not an electric bicycle, because the peak power would have to be 750 watts.
They have both switches underneath them.
Yeah. And the other key thing is the maximum speed for a non-pedal assist bike is 20 miles per hour. So that would be the key category for class 2, which is typically what you're seeing a lot of the kids ride, because they don't want to pedal, they just want to throttle. So a lot of parents are buying them.
I feel like after you guys started cracking down on it, though, probably like, almost like 2 months ago probably is when they really started cracking down on it. I feel like the majority, because I mean, Lincoln has an e-moto, he's not riding his around the village anymore, but like, I mean, his whole grade was, all had them, and I feel like now they've all just gone back to scooters, which, fine, but I feel like it's gotten much better, which, I mean, like Chris and I even had that conversation with Lincoln, though, like, he is fortunate enough to ride like actual motocross and do all those other things, where like a lot of your friends also though don't understand that, so like he was a little mad even, we're like, yeah, some of these kids are driving things going 50 miles an hour on an essentially motorcycle, and some of them don't have the understanding to do it or to be responsible with it, or like their parents are popping them on it and they're wearing a bike helmet with it and they're going 50 down the road, and like that's as a parent terrifying too. So
You should add that article.
I think this helps a ton having this, they're like explaining it to people.
They just had that article in the press gazette with brain injuries, and the amount of kids with brain injuries since these came out, those and scooters.
Not only that is, by PSA, the fires due to them because they're lithium-ion batteries.
Oh.
There's another one again last night, so.
So we're doing what we can. We recognize there's still challenges in the community. In fact, we got a message last night from an angry resident about Waterford Park and some of the e-bike users that are cruising through the park and all hours of the evening at all rates of speed. And so I would encourage, if people are seeing illegal use of these types of bikes, just contact public safety, non-emergency. They'll check it out and have a conversation with the kid. A lot of times it ends with a conversation with the parent, because we know that's where it kind of starts.
Yeah.
We would rather not enforce, we would rather educate and get compliance that way, but if push comes to shove, enforcement can be.
But this is giving the parents some power,
Well,
which they didn't have before.
and I think,
He does it, why can't I do it?
yeah, and these I think are nice because, again, I actually am very pro e-bikes. Like, so I do feel like being able to see the difference and be like, there's a place for it, because even as you guys are getting those complaints, some of those are also probably coming from people that are complaining about something where people aren't doing anything wrong also. So like, somehow I do feel like pedestrians, cyclists, people using e-bikes, everybody is going to be out using those things. So if we can get it where the ones who are doing it the right way aren't being impacted by the ones that are whipping through going 50, where now people are like, we want none of that, where it's like, well, no, some of this is still okay. Like, there's a difference here. So I think that that's gonna help a lot too, because like I said, I even like, again, we see a lot of families where they're out using them appropriately, or like I said, we have a lot of employees that this is literally how they get to work because they're excited now they have a vehicle because they used to take the bus everywhere. Like, and to them, this is like their vehicle. So it's like, I hate the idea that then some of this is getting squashed because of this. You know, there's a difference between a 25-year-old and a 12-year-old. And how they're using them too. So.
I think if a lot of these devices had a gas-powered motor in them, more people would be upset. I was at a soccer tournament a couple weeks ago, and 2 kids were riding on what looked like more of that motocross bike,
Yeah.
on the back there. Between the soccer fields, between the parents and the teams on the benches. And the parents, they would stop and talk to the parents, and then they'd cruise back and forth several times, and they'd stop and talk with the parents and thinking, if that were a gas-powered bike,
Right.
everyone would be freaking.
Well, because I think they're quiet.
They're
so
quiet,
like,
so they're
which-
like, oh, it's no big deal.
It's no big deal.
But they're going 25 miles an hour. And
I think that's also what can be dangerous about them too, though, is they're so quiet and they do have
Can't
so
see
much
them.
power. You can't see them, you don't hear them. And
Is that the dirt bike?
that's like I can show. I mean, again, I've been on
I
Lincoln,
just
those
figured out how
things.
to change the tube in one of those
Yeah.
yesterday.
So, I mean, I get the
Kids.
danger
toys.
with it.
So that's kind of just a quick snapshot on the e-bike materials that we've prepared. And like I said, every public safety officer has a stack of them in their car and using it to distribute.
That's perfect.
Yeah, I think that's nice. Looks great.
With that, any questions on
No.
that education? And when we get to scooters, we'll present that.
So what, so the scooters, you're saying, so like, is there like a watt thing for scooters?
It's all based on speed, max.
Oh,
speed,
max speed
And
for
then
them.
locations of where they can be ridden, instead
Yeah.
of bicycles, based on both statute and what we adopted as part of our code. So we're gonna have to kind of break that down.
Okay, because I do get a lot of, again, everyone's going away from these now, so now all the kids are going back to scooters and a lot of them are all
Technically,
getting.
scooters are not,
scooters.
we did not permit scooters to be operated on sidewalks.
Yeah. So, but like you said, so what is the max speed?
20 miles per
Oh, okay, well, that's still pretty.
Yeah.
Pretty quick, yeah.
hour. But they're limited to what roads they can be on as well.
Yeah.
So. So we're gonna kind of lay that out so it makes.
So it's nice and clean like this is,
Right.
love that.
There's a big difference in villages, probably city Green Bay as well, because of owning rental in Howard. They have
Oh, they have-
Facebook, they have the code and everything, and the rules are considerably different than ours, for e-bikes even. Where you can ride them and how you have to be careful of the pedestrian. And I mean, they put it together pretty nice, but this is great.
Mhm.
You need just to give parents some education.
Okay, at this point, we don't, staff-wise, unless there's questions or comments on the capital improvement plan, we really don't need to meet in August, if that's agreeable to the group. Unless there's something that needs to be brought up. And then we'll probably meet again in September, October to kind of finish out our year and kind of follow our quarterly plan with the group. With that, I guess I'll take a motion to adjourn for the group.
A motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
We have a motion by Dale for adjournment and second by Kim at 4:59. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. We are adjourned.
Come check out the library.
Check out the library.